So you don't actually have to copy down this word for word. What I do want you to do is open up your homework 2.5 WSP, and let's go back and do number 1, and let's also practice doing number 3. So I would like you to copy these questions over on this section of your notebook that says class opener, review number 1 for quiz 2.5, 2.6 that we're having Friday. So I'm going to just show you the homework right here, and I'm going to do numbers 1 and 3. And notice that on the first part of the homework, it says evaluate. It does not say solve. We want to evaluate. And evaluate means plug in the values that they give you and simplify. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be evaluating. We're going to be plugging in the values that they give us. Now, I want to go over this because I will select 4 of these out of the 2 worksheets. So the first 4 questions we're all evaluating on 2.5 WSP. The first 4 questions on the previous worksheet before this one was also WSPM. It was also evaluating. So out of those 8 questions, I'm going to handpick 4 of them. So you need to know how to do this. And I see some people struggling with this. Evaluate simply means plug it in. So let me tell you, the best advice I could give you when you're plugging in a value is to rewrite everything, but leave a blank spot on the position of the z in this case. So write down 16 minus absolute value of 2z, but I'm going to leave it blank, plus 1, and then close the absolute value. Now, what's happening between the 2 and the z? Multiplication. So you either put a multiplication dot right there and put a multiplication dot here, or you could put parentheses around the z value. And on the instructions, it says that z is -4. So let's plug in that -4 right in there. If you do use a multiplication dot, you don't need to put parentheses. But if you don't put the dot, put parentheses, please. Now, how do we simplify this? You always start with the inside of the absolute value, kind of like if it were parentheses, and you simplify the inside. So on the inside, we have multiplication and we have addition. Of course, we're going to multiply first. 2 times -4 is what?
-8.
We have -8. Bring down the plus 1, and we're still inside of the absolute value. What is -8 plus 1? -8 plus 1. You owe 8, -7, right? You owe 8, you have 1, you're going to owe 7. So -7 is the final simplified value on the inside of the absolute value. Okay, now, this is what we always do. Anytime you have absolute values, you plug in your values, you do all the math, and then at the very end, you do the absolute value of that number. Okay, but let me bring down the rest before I continue. So I want to bring down the 16 and also the minus sign. And now, I see a lot of students make mistakes here. They see the minus and they want to change it to plus plus. You do that if you have parentheses. Because if you had parentheses around the -7, there's nothing else to do. But right here you have the absolute value of -7. You don't have parentheses -7. You have the absolute value of -7, and you could actually do that. What is the absolute value of -7?
7.
That's 7. So you really have 16 take away 7. And what's 16 take away 7? Answer is 9. Once again, do not change minus to plus plus. That would be a mistake. You have to do the absolute value first. The minus sign simply comes down. The absolute value of -7 is 7. 16 minus 7 is your final answer, 9. Let's move on and try number 3. So right here, I give you 3 different values that I want you to plug in. The value of -1, 3, and -4 for x, y, and z. So again, the advice I give when you're evaluating is to rewrite everything exactly the way it is and leave some blank spots where your variables belong. So I'm going to rewrite it. Absolute value, -3y, I'm going to leave it blank, plus z, I'm going to leave it blank, close my absolute value, minus x, I leave it blank. So then I go back to my values to plug them in. Y equals what?
3.
Y equals 3 in this case. So let's put times, well, not times y, times 3. And how about the z value? What's the z value? -4. So we're going to put in a -4 right in there. And what's the x value? The x value is -1. So we're going to put a -1 right there. So notice, it's very important that you plug in your values after rewriting everything. The absolute value, the -3 is right there, the plus is right there, absolute value, the minus. Then you plug them in. That way you don't make mistakes. On this first part, we have -3 times 3. What's -3 times 3? Negative 9. So we have negative 9. And let's bring down the plus and the negative 4. And that's still inside the absolute value. What's negative 9 plus negative 4?
Negative 13.
Thank you. So we have negative 13, and that is, again, inside the absolute value. Now, on the outside, we still have a minus minus 1. That becomes a plus 1. So on the outside, we have a plus 1. So let's finish this off. What is the absolute value of negative 13?
13.
That's positive 13. And 13 plus 1? 14. Done. Okay, so we're going to be doing this on the Quiz Friday. I'm telling you, the first 4 questions on the Quiz Friday are going to come from these first 4 questions on 2.5 WSP, or it might come from the 2.5 WSPM. See, on WSPM, we had A value, B value, and C value. So, for example, if I gave you this one, A plus B inside the absolute value minus C, you plug in your values of A, B, and C up here, A, B, C, plug them all into your A, B, and C, and then work it out. So the first 4 questions, this is from the solution page, I'm sorry. The first 4 questions will come as evaluating problems, and they will be straight selected from these 2 worksheets. 4 out of these 8 will be selected, so please make sure you understand it. Let's go back to the class opener. Let's see what else they want us to do. They want us to go to number 6 on 2.5 WSP and solve it again, even though we already did it. Okay, so let's go to number 6 on our worksheet. And there's number 6. Now, on number 6, we are solving, right? It says solve. So we're going to solve, and in order to solve an absolute value equation, we need to set up what? The positive and the negative situations. And of course, the positive situation, how do you write the positive situation? You write it, rewrite it exactly the way it is, without the absolute value sticks, without the lines or the absolute value signs. So let's rewrite it. See, it's the same exact thing, except these guys are missing. It's just 3 minus 2r equals 7. Negative situation, it's the same exact thing again, 3 minus 2r, but instead of equals 7, what do I put? Negative 7, that's exactly right. Now we solve each of these simple 2-step equations. So on the left side, I'm going to get rid of what first? Remember, I want r by itself on the left side of the equal sign. I need to get rid of both of these. So what do we get rid of first? The 3, right? Remember, this is a movie star's buddy, bum at the corner. Get rid of this guy first. So you get rid of the 3 by doing the opposite, which is minus 3. 3 take away 3 is 0. And of course, what you do to one side, you must do to the other. Take away 3 over here. So what do we have left? We have a negative 2r. Bring down the equal sign. We have a 4. Now we need to recognize that this is really saying negative 2 times r equals 4. And we need to get rid of that multiplication of negative 2 by doing the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing by that same exact value, negative 2. What you do to one side, you do to the other. Final answer will be r equals negative 2. Let's do the other one. It's done the same exact way, right? Just like right here, you started by subtracting 3. Again, we're going to start by subtracting 3. The only difference is what you do to one side, you do to the other. We now have a negative 7 right here instead of a positive 7. So right here, of course, you get something different. Negative 7 take away 3 is what?
Negative 10.
Negative 10. All right, 2 people know how to add right there. Thank you. What do we have left? We have a negative 2r equaling negative 10. That's really saying negative 2 times r, so we're going to divide by that negative 2 to get rid of the multiplication of negative 2. And we do to one side, to do to the other side. So you have r equaling 5. Positive 5, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, so why did I make you do this question again? Well, because, hey, it came out in your homework, on class opener. It's probably going to be on the test. Now, keep in mind, guys, you don't get credit unless you show your work, all right? You don't get credit unless you show your work. So make sure you understand it and you're able to show your work on the test. Let's go back to the class opener, class opener here. Part 3 of this review says, given 2 answers, x equals negative 7 and x equals 1 on a number line, write the absolute value equation. So if you didn't copy this down, go ahead and copy down this number line, guys. Let me actually move this. up here so we can have more space. So we have a number line, and they give us the two answers, -7 and +1, and they want us to write the absolute value equation that'll produce those two answers. Now, the only way to get this part of the quiz on Friday, there's going to be 3 of these questions. The only way to get this part of the quiz on Friday is if you have your notes memorized. What were the notes? They are right here. The setup is absolute value of x minus a certain number, and that certain number is going to be your midpoint, equals another number, and that number is the distance from the point to the midpoint. You have to have this memorized. There's no way around it. Okay? So let's set it up. Let's write down absolute value of x minus blank spot, close the absolute value, equals blank spot. So of course we need to determine the number that belongs in here, and what's that number going to be? -3. That's the midpoint, right? If you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll be at the midpoint, -3. So this guy, that's our midpoint. I'm going to put an M right there. Anyway, we plug in a -3 right in there. Even though it was already a minus sign, right? You already had a minus sign from the original setup. You also have to put the negative in front of the 3. You can't just say, oh, there was a minus sign already, I just put the 3. That would be incorrect. It's always minus, and if it happens to be negative, you better write negative right there. Now, if your midpoint was something like 2, you would just write 2, and it would be x minus 2. But the midpoint is not 2, the midpoint's -3. You have to actually plug it in as a -3. Now, the distance from one point to the other, what's the distance? 4, that's right. So just count, and it doesn't matter which one you go from. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 4 units. And that is your equation. The only thing you could do to write that nicer is to change the minus minus to plus plus. So your final equation, absolute value equation, should be x plus 3 equals 4. Again, it's plus 3 because the minus minus changes the plus plus. And ladies and gentlemen, that is your absolute value equation that if you were to do a positive and negative situation for, if you were to do both equations and solve both, you're going to get the two answers, -7 and +1. So let's jump to the last question on the class opener. That is a multi-step equation that requires simplification on both sides, that has variables on both sides. So yeah, the majority of the quiz, 18 out of the 20 questions, will be from 2.5 and 2.6, but there's going to be 2 random questions like these guys solving the old equations that have multi-step simplification and variables on both sides. So let's work on this together, guys. Let's solve this one. Of course, you have the equal sign dividing the left side and the right side. And step 1 to solving any equation is to simplify. And simplify means 2 things. What are the 2 things that simplify means? Distributed property and the other one. What's the other one? Combining like terms. So right here we're going to distribute. Let's all do this together. 3 times x is what? 3x. 3 times -8 or 3 times -8 is what? -24. Bring down the -5. So now we have 3 terms you've already distributed. Could you combine any terms that are alike?
Yes.
Which ones?
-24 and -5.
-24 and -5. What is -24 and -5? -29. And of course we're going to bring down the 3x. And of course the equal sign is right here because that's what separates the left side from the right side. Now let's go to the right side because there's nothing else to do right here on the left side. Let's go to the right side and let's also distribute and then combine. So 9 times x, 9x. 9 times 2, +18. And then let's bring down the -6x. Now on the right side we've already distributed. Could we combine any like terms? Yes, the 9x we could combine with the -6x. What is 9x take away 6x? 3x. Let's bring down the +18. Maybe I should put it all in blue since I use blue for this part of the equation. And now we need to get x by itself on one side. The problem is, where's the x at? On the left side of the equation or the right side of the equation? Both. And you don't want it on both sides. So what do? You get rid of one of them, right? So let's get rid of this guy, the 3x. Let's get rid of it by doing a -3x. That will cancel. What I do to one side, I do to the other side, minus 3x over here. That'll cancel as well, which is weird because what do we have left? We have a negative 29 equaling a positive 18, right? The negative 29 comes down, the positive 18 comes down. And what do we think about this, guys? Negative 29 equals positive 18. That is impossible. So what do we do with this? We say no solution. Or you could put a circle with a line through it, okay? So again, consider this your first review for the first half of the quiz Friday. I hope we study this.